Welcome to the SBI podcast. You are joining the most watched and listened to show dedicated to B2B revenue growth. My name is Melissa Valdez, the Director of Client Engagement for SBI. Our guest today is Ryan Tognazzini, Chief Executive Officer for iGraphics. Ryan represents one of the new breed of sales-driven Chief Executive Officers who have come through the ranks of sales. Ryan is here to share his incredible journey from a frontline sales rep to the Office of Chief Executive. Enjoy the show.
From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to the SBI Podcast, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Many in the audience listening right now are sales leaders who aspire to be CEOs. And today we're going to unpack the career path, a new breed of sales-driven CEO, and what it takes to develop the business mindset to ascend to the top position. My name is Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI. I'm also your host. Joining me in the studio, as always, is my beloved co-host, Melissa Valdez. And Melissa's here to point you to resources to help you make your number. Melissa, welcome to the show, as always.
Thank you, Matt, and welcome to our audience.
So I am thrilled to have some SBI royalty in the studio with me. So Ryan Tognazzini is my guest. Ryan is the CEO of iGraphics, and what makes Ryan unique out of any other guest I've ever hosted, not only did I work with him for 7+ years at SBI and have known him for 20 years, I've had the beauty of watching his career go from card-carrying sales guy out of school to now the CEO of a software company, and he's had an amazing run. So, Ryan Tognazzini, otherwise known as Togs, so I don't even know how to call him Ryan. So, Togs, good to see you, brother. Welcome to the show. Can you tell the audience, before we talk a little bit about you and your ascent, can you talk a little bit about iGraphics, what you guys do, and how people should think about you guys as a company?
Yep, thank you for having me. It's nice to be on the other side of the table. So we are an enterprise class business operations and modeling software, which is a fancy way of saying we help big companies figure out what their processes are, how to improve those processes, and really to optimize their business performance. So we're in a pretty niche space in terms of what we do, but we work with primarily enterprise organizations. So we work with 2/3 of the Fortune 100 and 5 of the top 10 U.S. banks. So we've got some nice blue chip logos on our roster, which is great.
Okay. So Melissa, Ryan and I are going to go through the show today, and I think the listeners and the viewers are going to want to follow along. So can you share with them how they might do that?
I feel like we're in the presence of greatness today here with Tog. So you all, our audience, are in for a treat today. But in order to be a market leader, you must grow revenue faster than the industry and faster than your competitors. And we here at SBI call that making your number. So we've developed this fantastic workbook on how to make your number. If you want to follow along, you want to get some fantastic methodologies, tools, and tips, you will get this awesome workbook at sbi.tips/2018 workbook.
All right, let's jump into the questions. So, Togs, sales guy, CEO, 17 years. Talk a little bit about how did you make that transformation?
I would say it's probably a combination of taking some risk and some dumb luck. And so what I mean by that is even all the way back when I was at Cintas as a up and down the street sales rep, in our branch, there was an opportunity to take over as a service manager, which was in an operational role, something I had never done before. I was scared to death to accept the challenge, but it was something different from selling. I knew I wanted to kind of broaden my background and experience because all I'd done out of college was selling. So I jumped at the opportunity, and within 2 years, that materialized into a general manager role where I was running a branch of 120 employees and 25 or 30 million in revenue.
Yeah. So part of it had to do with seizing opportunity, but part of it had to do with while you were selling and you had sales DNA, also recognizing that you needed business DNA. So talk a little bit about that and how you built on that, because many of the folks listening, many of the guys that you and I used to consult with, chief revenue officers, billion-dollar software companies, they were the guy running the revenue. They want to be the CEO and they're stuck and they can't get there. And they're listening right now going, okay, if I want to be a CEO, what do I need to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to really understand outside of just making the number, which don't get me wrong. That's critically important. But what really makes the business run, and having some business acumen beyond kind of your traditional sales KPIs. So, what markets should we be in? What markets should we not be in? What's the real product that we're bringing to market? Whose problem does it truly solve? Why does anybody care?
Yep.
And getting a real understanding of the other facets of the business. When my boss hired me, one of the things he told me was, it's going to take time. And he said, you sales guys, you think you can fix things with a good quarter.
What?
And he said, be patient. He's like, you guys are never patient. And that was one of the things that I really had to learn to get used to, is that there are so many things that happen inside the business that impact the performance of the company that are out of just the, selling a big deal, out of your control. So.
And then talk a little bit about, you came to SBI, and I was fortunate that you trusted us enough to come join us. And I think that was another evolution. And many people think about consulting. If I'm a sales leader, I spend 30 years as a sales leader, and then I'll do a little consulting on the side when I retire and pontificate and give people some advice, and they'll pay me, $5.50 an hour. And you and I both know that's not the way that it works. What did the tour of duty, just in the consulting construct, as your evolution to CEO, how did that impact it?
Yeah, and I'm gonna try and not sound like an SBI commercial here, but there's some real truth to what I learned through really kind of the concept around revenue growth, and that's that sales is a couple of steps down in the food chain, right? Or not down, but just along in the path of an organization's success. So if you're not clear on why your company really exists and what it is that you're trying to do, and you don't really have a compelling product and with which to solve those problems, and you don't have a really good message, the best sales leader in the world has got a pretty tough, ask in terms of whether or not they can be successful. Yep. And it didn't, even in our early days at SBI, we really focused on the sales leader, and now I think the firm has kind of broadened its scope in terms of trying to really get an understanding of what the business is all about. Yep. And for me, that was a real, it was like a world-class MBA for me, because I got a real understanding of what it takes to actually sell through the lens of all these other functional groups. And we, in our engagements at SBI, you spend time with all these people, you understand what their challenges are, what they're trying to do, whether they're connecting with their peers at a functional level inside of the companies. Yep. So
you have access to all these businesses. We did our work together. You got this appreciation for what it takes. So now you have made this transition from salesman to businessman. You are a year into your journey, I think, right around that, just over a year. Biggest surprise that you weren't expecting? And what's the thing that you felt incredibly capable and you were ready to consume? You're like, I got this one.
So probably the biggest surprise for me would be the people component, and I guess people related to execution and sort of winning the hearts and minds of the organization. It's great if you have all the answers or you can figure out the answers. So the second part of your question is, and that's by no means am I saying I have all the answers, but I at least had a framework to process information to make decisions. Yep. And so, that part of it was, I felt incredibly prepared for it. The challenge of it, and our company was founded in 1991, so we've been around for a long time, and we've got over 4 centuries of just tenure inside our company alone. So we've got people who are very, very much experts in the space and very much experts in our company, and trying to do things differently or trying to do things that allow us to leapfrog our competition. Changing the hearts and minds as somebody who comes from out of the industry, somebody who doesn't have expertise in what it is that we do, and getting everybody sort of on board going in that path was, I wouldn't say it's been hard, but you definitely you got to earn it with your team.
Did the out of industry context for you, going to iGraphics, advantage or disadvantage?
Advantage, in my case.
Why?
4 centuries of expertise. We don't need more expertise. God love it. God love everybody in our organization, but I mean, they understand really what it is that we're about and what we do.
Yeah.
So that's not an asset for me to have.
Yeah.
And vice versa, me bringing in outside expertise. I mean, I've been in and out of 200 software companies as part of SBI, so I've seen a lot of things done really, really well, and really, lots of innovation, lots of creativity, and lots of things that that were done sort of the wrong way. Yeah. So the organization didn't need somebody who had more expertise in our space. They needed someone, I think, to bring some different ideas, and we can apply the expertise to those ideas, and it's kind of a 1 + 1 = 5.
So if you are a CEO or you're a board member listening to this show or watching the show, there's often comfort that you take in hiring people who come from the industry, and you believe that industry depth is going to result in above average revenue growth. And as Ryan said, and that was not a plug, those two things are not correlated, because you have all these people who have domain expertise. Togs, I would almost take it to the point where you have the ability, because you didn't grow up in the industry, to have curiosity that's really purposeful and say, hey, why do we do it like that? Oh, we've always done it like that. Well, how come? And it allows people to step back and question conventional wisdom. And I think that's also sometimes the value, when we would be doing consulting projects together as well. Yeah,
the great benefit that I found from this is the problems that companies have are oftentimes the same. I mean, let's be honest. There's only so many ways that companies are struggling to generate revenue, and so that was true for us too. And so what's been really helpful is I've seen these problems before, or some of our team has seen these problems before. But taking that plus the expertise and understanding, okay, if we have 3 choices in terms of how to solve this problem, what's the best one for us based on all? Because there's tons of things about our organization I still don't know, and I rely heavily on our team to kind of give me that information. But the ability to recognize the problems and come up with solutions that are the best fit for us has made it a really good combination, I think.
Good. So Ryan and I are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about his first year and what he did and how he got the organization in alignment. Before we do that, Melissa, I think you have something you want to share with the audience.
I do. I have a fantastic tool for our audience to share. So those of you listening and watching might be wondering how you're going to make your number. Well, SBI has built a web-based self-assessment that you can use to assess your go-to-market strategy against the emerging best practices of market leaders. And I know you're sitting at the edge of your seat wondering how you can get this fantastic tool. You'll go to sbi.tips/revenue growth diagnostic. Say that 5 times fast. Or you can just put SBI revenue growth diagnostic into Google and it'll pull it right up.
Perfect. You're listening to the SBI podcast. I'm your host, Matt Shares, and today's guest is Ryan Tognazzini, otherwise known as Togs, CEO for iGraphics. Ryan and I are talking about the journey from salesman to CEO and his life now having been in the seat for a year. So we're going to jump back into it. So, Togs, when you were here, you spent an inordinate amount of time running major engagements with some of the biggest private equity firms in the world, working with CEOs of brand name software companies that many of our listeners would recognize. So you had this front row seat to how deals were getting done on leverage. You had a front row seat into turnarounds. You had a front row seat into public to private transactions. I mean, you saw a lot, and you were advising. Now you're in the seat. Talk a little bit about what you've been able to take and how your view in the seat has helped you, from what you had, has helped you prioritize the things to go and work on.
Well, I would say that one of the big things that I told myself when I took this role is it's time to put your money where your mouth is. I've been given a lot of advice for a long time, and can I take my own advice? So that certainly was an initial thing that I thought a lot about when I took the role. In terms of kind of how we prioritized, I sequenced sort of our approach. So I'm in my 4th quarter now in the role. I really spent the first 2 quarters understanding the company, the culture, why we exist. So if you think about kind of corporate product marketing, sales strategy, and again, I'm not trying to sound like an SBI commercial, but I really focused on. We didn't have core values as an organization. We didn't have a mission statement. We didn't have a vision statement. So as a 27-year-old company, I spent a lot of time I think I met everybody in the company in the first 2 weeks I was there. And the first question I asked them was, why are you here? just trying to get an understanding of why these individuals have spent so many years working for this company and why we even really existed. And getting a real firm understanding of what is our purpose, what are we here to serve for our customers, before we get too focused on what the product needs to do, what the sales organization needs to look like. It was just, hey, what are we trying to accomplish as an organization, and where's our spot in the world?
That takes an inordinate amount of discipline to take that time while things are happening and numbers need to be produced and the board's, hey, how's it going, right? Checking in and asking questions. So as you looked at your first 100 days and you made that decision to do that, how did you message to the board that you were going to do this and that they had to be patient?
Well, so the board's been in the investment for over 5 years, so they understand kind of the mechanics of what's going on in the business. So I had the luxury of them having, and we're a small business, so they're pretty close to the action, so to speak. It was kind of parallel paths, I think, is what I focused on. So one was I had to learn our space because it was a completely new industry for me, and I mentioned we're pretty niche-y, so there's a lot of information out there, but I was looking for good information. And I would say there was a balance of kind of the strategic and the tactical, right? So it was me getting smart on our industry, it was me understanding our business, me understanding our culture, and then on the tactical side, looking for just fundamental quick wins. So as a small business, a lot of times things are done, it's sort of the tyranny of the urgent, not a lot of process in there, even though we're a process company, but how we run a sales campaign, how we run a marketing campaign. We were very disciplined in how we build our product. We use agile development. And so we were able to leverage from strength from there. But doing some fundamental things of just, basic blocking and tackling while also kind of looking at the bigger picture. So it's kind of the balance between the two is where I spent a lot of my first 100 days.
Okay. So come out of the first 100 days, you're looking at major initiatives. How did you prioritize those major initiatives? And then how did you create clarity for your senior team so that they felt like they were working on the right things?
So the first thing that we did is we needed to implement some kind of an operating cadence. We didn't have one. There was a weekly staff meeting that was primarily a kind of a sales deal review meeting, which alienated most of my functional leaders, right? And so we got rid of that. We never had one when I took over the role. And we implemented a methodology called traction, which is similar to scaling up or Rockefeller habits. And so the first thing we did is we put together, it's a 2-page strategic plan, basically, but our core values, 1-year plan, 3-year plan, 5-year plan, what makes us unique. And we started from that as kind of the pillar or the foundation. And then the operating cadence behind that is really weekly meetings, monthly meetings, QBRs. And so in the weekly meetings, those are problem-solving discussions. They're not reporting the news. So we bring issues, we vote on which are the top 2 or 3 issues we want to cover in that weekly meeting. And as a functional leadership group, everybody gives their input. We make a decision. We assign an owner who's going to go do the to-do, and off we go. So for the first time, we got everybody kind of at the table, having a conversation about what's holding the business back, not what's going to close in the next 30 days. It's going to, help make payroll or things like that.
So if you're a CEO listening and you think about your operating rhythm, what Ryan was kind enough to just describe, a couple things that I would take from that. Number one is it's not the deal review. Yeah, you got to have deal reviews. I'm the last guy in the world to say don't do deal reviews. But it is about bubbling up things where people are stuck and putting muscle behind removing those obstacles. And if you do that 52 times, you start to have a problem-solving engine inside the organization. I think, Togs, the second thing I would take from that is, and I'm assuming, so correct me if I'm wrong, you probably create some empowerment with your functional leaders where you don't become the bottleneck. And when people see the process that you all go through, if I'm running engineering, I feel empowered that I can go off and make a meaningful impact to the company this week, the next couple of weeks, because of that rhythm. So you're starting to put points on the board. Yeah, no, did you notice?
No doubt. And I think it's sometimes as the CEO of the company, there's a misconception that you have all the answers, and by no means do I have, nor do I want them all. I would rather make fewer decisions than more. And so, yes, one of the things that we recognized is that there was a bottleneck of a lot of decision making happened at the CEO level, and I oftentimes don't even understand what the right decision would be. Right? I mean, it's just not part of my expertise. And so, yes, the empowerment there, getting people to talk across functions. Even in a small company, silos exist, right? And so, getting people to talk about we're having this issue and getting feedback from somebody who doesn't even work in that group, doesn't even really totally understand the problem, but comes up with some creative idea. Oh, that's good. Let's talk about that a little bit more. And then the second thing that we did is we implemented a leadership academy, which is developing future leaders for our organization, which is something I learned from SBI because I was in it. And allowing kind of development of future leaders for the business. So as we scale, I've got now talent that I can kind of put in some of these leadership roles, and they're all invited to the weekly meeting. So I literally have, 15 of my 60 employees on a weekly meeting doing problem solving. So the exposure is like completely transparent to the business.
That's fantastic.
So it's not just about, me making decisions, but anybody can contribute to that conversation.
All right. So Ryan and I are going to take another break. And Melissa's going to share with you another resource. And then when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what the future looks like for Ryan as he's built this foundation as a CEO, moving quickly and empowering his team. So, Melissa, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Matt. I do have something for our audience. For those of you out there who want to learn how to grow your revenue faster than your industry and your competitors, I highly recommend an interactive workshop with one of SBI's subject matter experts. And we'd love to have you down here in Dallas, Texas at the studio at our fantastic briefing center. And you never know, Ryan Tognazzini may make a guest appearance if you do find yourself down here.
If you get lucky.
If you're lucky. And Matt shares as well.
That's right. I'm always here. So welcome back. We're moving into our last segment, and I'm here with Ryan Tognazzini, and Ryan is the CEO for iGraphics. And Ryan and I have been talking about his transformation from sales leader to CEO leader and leading a transformation at the company that he is now leading. So, Togs, you talked about culture, purpose, vision, mission, values, laying a foundation. Obviously, you've got to grow revenue. So I'm going to pivot the conversation a little bit, and we're going to spend this last segment talking about revenue growth. So as you looked at prioritizing initiatives to move the revenue number, what did you find were the maybe 2 or 3 things that you put your finger on in the first year that you're now going to cascade and drive into year 2?
So in some ways, we are the best kept secret in our space. We've been around for a long time. We're one of kind of the pioneers in our space. We've been historically a very development-led organization. We've got a very robust solution that is second to none in terms of our competitors in the marketplace. What we needed or what we need is a way to tell that story. So we've invested heavily this year in really standing up a marketing organization that is allowing us to tell that story and allowing us to sort of let our attributes shine to the marketplace.
Yeah.
The second thing that I would say...
If I can interject.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
So many CEOs don't believe in marketing. They don't understand it. You had a lens of advising and knowing the value of having air cover from marketing, but you also have a ground game with the sales team. So you knew the impact of doing that. Advice you would give to other CEOs listening about the way they look at marketing?
I mean, you can have the greatest product in the world, but if nobody knows about it, who cares? It's kind of that simple.
Well said, man.
So I would say, yes, I've seen a lot of it, in my experience, a lot of CEOs who the first thing that they want to cut is sort of marketing spend. The advice I would give is your marketing actually helping you drive revenue? Because marketing is, we were talking about this at dinner last night, but the space of marketing is so vast, and it's like exponentially growing with apps, with technologies, with channels to reach buyers. I mean, it's overwhelming at times, right? Yeah. So it's about picking your spots, and are the spots you're picking actually generating any kind of results for you? Yeah. So having some kind of KPIs or some way to kind of measure it. But it's easy to shift dollars. I mean, you could shift dollars around in marketing to things that are working for you. So, but I would not discount it by any stretch of the imagination.
Did you, and on that topic, did you increase marketing spend as a percentage of revenue?
We've doubled it. We're going to double it next year, and so. The primary, I mean, it was underfunded to begin with, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. So come in, recognize marketing's underfunded, hired a new CMO.
Yep.
revenue-driven, forward-facing CMO, so you invested heavily. So that was a couple of big moves. What else relative to the initiatives to turn up revenue growth as you peak into 18?
Indirect channel. So we are a small business. Adding a lot of direct sales headcount is expensive. We're an enterprise software company, so enterprise salespeople don't come cheap. And really, if you, without going into too much detail about the space that we're in, we're a piece of a very broad, business process management, business operations solution set. So we're better together. So when a customer goes and wants to implement iGraphics, they may have IBM's BPM platform. Yep. They may have Pega. They may have an automation tool. Yep. And so all of those tools are getting implemented with the help of either global SIs like a PwC or a Deloitte or an Accenture, or regional or boutique folks. Like we work with a company out of Austin called BP3, and they're specialists and experts in this space, but they help customers implement and install and work through these initiatives, and there's various tools there. So the indirect channel for us is like customers already having the broader conversation. We're a piece of that conversation. It's a natural fit for us.
Okay. So marketing strategy, marketing spend, hired a CMO, indirect channel, sales leader, new sales leader?
Yes, so we do business globally. So we actually have business in North America, EMEA, and Asia. Okay. Our Asia business is primarily driven through partners. Yep. And then I have an EMEA, basically a GM for EMEA, and North American sales leader. Okay.
Looking back on year one, thinking about your team, many CEOs when they first walk in, and I went through this at SBI, being all of 5 months into my tenure as a CEO, you have to take a look and you say, do I have the right team? So how did you size that up? What was the answer? And what'd you do?
So SBI has some famous line about it's 50% performance conditions and 50% people. I would say it's really all about the people. Yeah. Not all, but the performance conditions are incredibly important, but the people really matter. And I, talking back to one of the maybe the surprises or the things that I didn't think was as important as it is the people. And so really understanding what each individual does at our team and how much the leadership is important to our organization. And not only from a capability standpoint, but again, in a small business, that we all are on the same page. Yep. And that we all are trying to do the same thing. And quite frankly, that we all have fun. Yep. I spend a third of my waking hours or more, at work. It's nice to have a group of people that you enjoy doing it with, and that's a huge thing for us.
Yeah, I would tell you a concept I've been spending a lot of time on and have rolled out to the firm is around the employee experience. Mm-hmm. We're fanatical about client experience, and I think most people you talk to would say it's all about the customer, all about the client. If you don't have employees that are delighted, truly having a great experience, especially when you run a services firm like I do, you can't do what you need to do with the client. So I agree with you, and I too am learning an appreciation as somebody who can drive pretty hard, that people have to have a good time along the way.
Yeah, and I mentioned that we documented our core values in the first 30 days that I was in the business, and it really was a matter of documenting it. The 27-year-old company, they existed, they just weren't written down. So we have 5 core values. They have not changed, so we got them right because we've made minor tweaks to them, but we haven't added or deleted any in the year that I've been here. But we've used that lens heavily, and we've asked some people to leave because even though they performed well, they do not demonstrate our core values. And in a small business, you got people who piss people off. Like, sorry, you can't be here anymore. So it's just we have 2 people who are too valuable, and it causes too much brain damage for the organization. So,
all right, ma'am. Last question. So you're a year in. Somebody's listening right now who's getting ready to take their first job, their first assignment as a CEO, and they're walking in. Give them your best piece of advice to help them have a great first year.
I would say be patient, especially if you're coming from the sales side of the business. Learning patience in this is, again, you can't fix it with a good quarter. If there are things that are happening in the business that are symptomatic of larger issues, you got to be patient because it really takes time to make some of those changes stick. And you're not going to know if the things you're doing now are working for a couple of quarters at least. Yeah. So you got to be patient.
Yep. All right, man. Great to see you.
Thank you. Great to be back.
Yeah, good to see you thriving.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, couldn't be happier. So I want to thank Ryan for spending time with us. I want to thank you, our audience. You have a choice on where you put your eyes and your ears every single day and every single week, of the fact that you would spend 30 minutes with us. I greatly appreciate that, and I appreciate you. Melissa's going to share one more thing with you before we go.
Yes, I have to touch on the patience comment. It makes me think of, you can't expect a baby to dress themselves in a year, right? What? Even though we all hope that happens, that doesn't happen overnight. But for those of you listening, we feature about 50 guests per year here on the SBI podcast, and we don't know everybody. We know a lot of people, but we don't know everyone. So if you have a compelling story to share with the world of B2B sales and marketing, I'd love to hear from you. Just look me up on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to connect. Melissa Valdez, and I look forward to hearing your story.
All right, that's it for today. And as always, everybody, I wish you the best of luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.